our agenda review.
You're there.
Okay, and this is the agenda review for the upcoming meeting on Tuesday, January 22nd. Could we please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Schofield.
Okay, we do not have anything on presentations and proclamations. First item on the consent agenda is authorization to award a contract for permanent water main sampling points in the amount of $196,700. There are 70 points. It's an approximate cost of $2,810. This comes under the category of why didn't we think of this sooner? But it will make sampling much easier, and we do have to do the sampling there. It's fairly critical, and it also takes up half of the whole agenda package. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, this is part of our approved capital project, and as Mr. Schofield mentioned, this is a regulatory requirement. Every month we sample. Currently we do 60 because of population. We have to go to 70. Sites around the village for bacteria, chlorine, and pH to make sure the distribution system is safe and meets all water quality requirements. We currently use hose bibs at residential properties, hose bibs at lift stations. From a quality control standpoint, it's not ideal. So what these will be is permanent lockable stations at fixed locations, so we don't have to go into private property anymore. And from a quality control standpoint, it's much, much better. So most of the utilities are migrating to this type of system.
And knowing where the sampling point is doesn't disturb the process at all. I mean, I'm thinking before they were random, and now we know exactly where they are.
No, the health department has to approve the locations. The problem
Okay.
was we would do it at hose bibs, so there's the potential for contamination, there's the potential for manipulation, so it's just not good from a quality control standpoint for laboratory samples.
Okay. Any questions?
So this is under the $250,000 that we had reserved for this, right?
Yes, it is.
And it's significantly lower than the highest guy, which just kind of raises eyebrows. Why is there such disparity, and are we confident with this vendor that we're using?
That's always hard to tell why there's a disparity. I mean, it's a pretty simple project. We feel very comfortable with the contractor. It's really a very simple project to execute.
And then the thing is, when you start looking at the cost, the second low bidder was within $2,000,
Yeah, I saw that.
and there was $25,000. There was $25,000 spread between the three lowest bidders, and the high bidder was, usually those kinds of numbers that they're bidding, they've just given you a number, so if they don't want the work, and if you pay them what they're asking for, then they can hire the additional crews. But I'm not at all worried about that spread. It's pretty good with the three low bidders.
Okay.
What is the maintenance on this going forward?
Very limited. They're in fixed cabinets. They have stainless steel piping and they lock, so the sampler opens it up, turns it on, takes a sample, closes it back on. So it's very...
So there's not annual maintenance to this or
No.
of some sizable amount?
No, just making sure they're intact and they're safe and maintained.
It'd be about the same amount of maintenance you have to do on one of the hose bibs outside your house.
And how would those be contaminated? They don't have a
they're not...
RPZ valve or whatever? Or
Contamination is, dirt and debris, and, people are touching their hose bibs all the time. And, so you have to take a lot of care when you're doing the sample to ensure that the sample's not contaminated. And if we get false readings, it requires us to do a whole lot of additional testing, and sometimes could cause unnecessary boil water events. So this really is
And these
very
are
good.
made for this purpose, so they're not going to have those rings around them that...
Well, only we can access them. They're
Right.
locked, and only we can access. A hose bib, anybody can access.
Okay. And they're closed, so there's no
They're
dirt.
enclosed.
Okay. All right, very well.
Next item is authorization to continue utilizing the City of Baytown, Texas contract as a basis for pricing for our utility bill printing and mailing. They are perennially the low bidder on these. They have been doing this for years.
They are perennially the low bidder.
And we recommend using Baytown because they are by far the least expensive, and they have provided us excellent service for a number of years.
And we've tried to use local, it sounds odd, but this
There
is
is
just.
nobody, you know, the Boca
Come out of
Raton.
Tampa anyways, I think.
Boca Raton has a contract with the same company. We're at 8.8 cents. Boca Raton is at 10.6 cents from exactly the same company. So we figured we'll use the cheaper of the two contracts.
And let's,
Lar-
and let's
large
not say that too many times. Let's
Yeah.
move right on.
Just
and-
keep going.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, very well.
Nice job, Baytown.
You can send him a thank you note.
Right, exactly.
The next item is authorization to renew existing contracts for the purchase and delivery of mosquito chemicals. This was originally awarded for 2 years with 2 additional 1-year extensions. We're recommending that we renew that. There is a very slight, and I mean very slight, price increase that is within the contract. But if you look at the cost for I can't even pronounce it, but it's the third item down. That's going from $33.15 a gallon to $33.81. And the fourth item down is going from $20.24, the contract price, to $20.85. The price increases are minimal. So last year, and we're recommending renewal, and these are the best available prices.
And Mr. Schofield or Mr. De La Vega, the units of size in the 2 columns where it shows the changes, the 33.15, and then you get same product at 33.81 per gallon. Is it per gallon or per drum, or what are we talking about? Like, let's say in the third item.
They're 55-gallon drums, and each
Yeah.
drum,
It's a 30-gallon drum, and we're getting 550 gallons is the basis for the pricing.
Okay, got it.
Estimated quantity is
550.
550.
yeah.
And they
That's the
come in
basis for the
30.
price.
I got it. I want to know the change. Okay, got it.
And that price actually didn't go up. It's the primary is Univar, which is $17.50, and they kept the price at $17.50, so that one is actually good.
The 2 that did go up are per gallon.
Yeah.
And this is the product that goes in the trucks
Yes.
that gets sprayed, and the aerial spraying is done by the county. Do we hand spray any of this?
I'm sorry, the aerial spray?
The aerial spraying is a county.
County,
This is
correct.
what we put in the trucks that go out and fog.
Right, the ULV, the ultra-low volume, which is the foggers that we do on roads, public rights-of-ways, et cetera. We don't do any private property. Generally, we also handle all our public spaces, and this also includes the larvicide products that we do in the actual inlets and basins.
Okay, so that's the other way
Yeah,
we
it's not just,
do it.
it's not
Drop
just a
'em.
spray, right, it's not just a fogger, it's also the other products that we use for preventive maintenance. And we do all
Okay,
the work
well, that is money well
in-house.
spent.
Yeah, and we do all the work in-house,
Okay.
all the applications
The
done
application of
in-house.
this is in-house, okay.
The next item is Resolution 2019-06, Wally World Villas replat. What this is, for those of you who remember, out on the Folk Zone a number of years ago, we had a unit that we demolished. The infamous blue tarp unit is demolished. Wally Sanger bought that. He is going to redevelop it. It had 4 rental units on it before. These will become townhomes, I believe, but in order to do that, he has to plat it, and this is the plat.
So he's replatting these lots, so he must be selling these units?
They're going to be individually owned, yes.
Okay,
Something we're trying to encourage.
right. But we had talked about, did we ever pass that you didn't have to replat if it's already platted? We had talked about it.
We have done some things. If you want to do a condo, you don't have to replat, but if you want to take a unit that has a fourplex on it, even though the lot is platted, if you want to sell it fee simple, you do have to plat it. What we changed were the regulations that made it nearly impossible to plat those based on setbacks and separations.
I thought we were going with
Go ahead.
so he's changing the size of the units, is what he's doing.
Basically, what was there before, I think, it was not set up as fee simple units, so he still has to plat the actual individual fee simple units that he's putting on there as a townhouse.
I thought we had made a way around that, which is fine. I mean, this is not a problem.
We did a lot of things to make it so that it could happen.
But those are on existing units that have already been built that are,
Right.
but this is a platted subdivision. It's already platted.
Right, the whole place is planned. Now, the good news is, after all this discussion, staff is actually recommending postponing this to the next meeting based on the request of the property owner and the agent, because they have some corrections they want to make to the lab dedication.
Corrections
Right.
relative to what?
Okay.
The party wall agreement. Yeah, as townhouses, there's,
A party wall.
yeah.
Got
Right.
it, got it, got it.
Right.
So, and that came in yesterday.
It came in yesterday, and engineering and also planning has some concerns about the changes that they're requesting, and it's going to be very difficult for them and then for us to review those changes and have it ready for you to be approved on Tuesday. So I
Just
think
move it.
we're recommending that we postpone it.
All right.
All right, then
I
that,
wondered when I saw Wally World if that was,
all he's saying.
okay.
Resolution number 2019-07, Oakmont Estates Traffic and Parking Enforcement Agreements. In private gated communities, PBSO does not do traffic or parking enforcement because they are private streets, and there is no guarantee that they meet the standards. So if in order for us to do that, any community can enter into an agreement. This is the agreement whereby they agree to make sure that their signs meet DOT standards and those types of things. It's a fairly standard agreement. We have them throughout the village, and it simply allows PBSO to deal with issues like parking and speeding and running traffic signs in those subdivisions, which they cannot currently do. And we are recommending approval of that as well.
And we have these, and there are these for lots of other gated communities. That's how
Yes.
that this operates.
This is a standard agreement. It operates with most of them. It's interesting, the only place we have Olympia is kind of the hybrid community, because we have an agreement in most of the in Olympia, but some of the sub-HOAs have opted out because they don't like the way we enforce no parking on the streets.
It becomes difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, because you got to be careful what you ask for. So, but we don't do this anywhere where we don't have this agreement.
Correct.
But they have to invite us in.
Right.
Yes.
And
Us,
that,
in this case, is PBSO.
and this is basically for things like speed control.
Traffic control and parking enforcement.
Parking
Right.
and speed.
Right. I mean, if someone has a call for service, they can get in, but,
Calls for services are handled. This is, we
Right.
do not deal with parking enforcement in gated communities absent the agreement.
when they request this coverage, do they pay for that separately? If they ask
No,
for...
it's included in there.
It's included, as long as they invite us in and they say, hey, come by and do some
Right.
speed control in the interest of public,
Right.
Safety.
The PBSO really wants to do these things. The reason that we can is because if it's, they're not technically rights of way. What they are is access easements. So the traffic rules that apply to a public right-of-way road do not apply to access easements absent the agreement. And that's all the agreement does, is make the same rules apply there that apply to any public street.
very well.
Okay, that takes us to the end of the consent agenda and on to public hearings, and the item under public hearings is second reading of ordinance number 2019-01 nuisance. I did have an opportunity to meet with the golf course owner and his attorney yesterday. Rachel and I both met with them. We had a kind of wide-ranging discussion, but in the end, they really hadn't read the ordinance. What I had asked that they do is take yesterday and today and give me any concerns that they have, and I'll bring them up Tuesday night if I have them. But we talked about a couple of other things, but mostly it was why our definition of a golf course was developed land, and it's because it's not in its natural condition. Now, if they have some specific concerns, I'll bring them to you as soon as I know what they are, but we met with them for about an hour and a half. It was a relatively cordial meeting. Talked about a variety of other things that don't relate to this, but I'll talk to you all about them separately.
So at the last meeting, last Tuesday, they objected to the ordinance, and from last Tuesday to yesterday's meeting, they hadn't read the ordinance they objected to?
He had not read the ordinance, and
Okay.
we provided it to him yesterday.
Okay.
And our general discussion was this is codifying what our rules already are.
Right.
So,
We're already doing, exactly.
right, but, and the only point of concern, I think, was like a resident had raised where that north course has been out of operation for at least 18 years. Mr. Schofield thinks it might be more than that, but at least 18 years the north course has not been operated. So some areas, if you're going to call them low-growing things, but they have grown up and it looks natural to the residents, that's the only concern that one resident had and only concern I had, which is, you know, if we're going to go in and say that this is a low-growing thing and it's now 6 feet tall and it's bushy and they like that, you know, I don't want people to see like clear cutting, mowing, and think that we directed that.
One of the things that we did talk to them about yesterday was, for course, you know, the golf courses, the north course, I personally don't believe that's ever going to be a golf course again. If they're going to take it out of use as a golf course and they want to do something else, I think we would be amenable to, and the current code allows for a management plan for it. And if the management plan says something, you know, areas that are close we maintain, there are areas that we let go of, we control the nuisance vegetation, you give us a management plan for that, and the planning department can deal with and approve that today. It's not something that would be difficult or onerous, and the code does make the provision for that today. And I can't remember who asked, but I think at the council meeting, one of you all asked the question about, well, could we return an area to its natural condition? And the code does provide for that.
When we say nuisances, we're generally just talking about things that allow for varmints to grow and be, you know, live in and things like that. But we're talking holly, you know, Brazilian pepper, Australian pines, is that part of the nuisance?
It certainly can be. The whole issue here is that we're dealing with two separate sets of standards. You have the nuisance ordinance, which is in the Code of Ordinances, and then you have the landscape and property maintenance standards, which are in the land development regulations. The land development regulations already govern this. There's the goal here is to make the nuisance ordinance and the land development ordinances more consistent. So that it's very clear in both of them. Now, you know, we're in the process of making the land development regulations readable in English, and at some point we may attempt to do that with a code of ordinances, although that is a much more difficult process and one that I happily get to handle legal.
Very good.
Rachel did not like that.
I don't mind. I just want to direct your attention to the packet that was on your desk this morning, because there was a small change to the ordinance, so I want to make sure you're looking at the right wording. We added the word water body to section 1, where it provides a definition of developed property, and that was based on some discussion that was had last time. We decided to include the word waterway and water body to make sure that it is inclusive. And so
So this is the final version now?
the final version that you received this morning is the final version.
But that's the only change, adding the words water body to what was
Yes, and
in
we
the
also
book.
corrected the tenses of the words that are underlined there, just
Okay.
because some were plural and some were singular, but not a substantive change.
Okay, thanks.
Why does water body not include a waterway or a lake? It seems a little redundant, just water body to me sounds like.
We're trying to broaden this out.
It describes the most.
Well,
that right?
We just want to
therein-
make sure.
Therein lies one of the issues is that if you are a practicing planner or a practicing engineer in Florida, the
I
term,
regret this question right here.
the term water body will include both natural and man-made thing, and anything that has standing surface water. If you are of the profession.
Trying to shorten the answer right now.
That three people in this practice, you may be looking at that and goes, well, I don't know that a water body's a lake.
Okay, all right,
That's what
so
we're
we're
doing.
just making sure that we've covered it, but also recognizing that we may own some of the water bodies. Some of the water bodies
Yes, that was one
running
thing
through
that I was very
things.
clear about.
Okay.
That these rules, the way they are amended, they apply to us as well as everybody else. And the one place that it's more of a concern for me than any other place, I just want you all to know, is that if the aldermans decide not to farm K Park, we will be out providing, regular maintenance on that. And instead of making $50,000 a year on it, we will be spending it. So,
Right, we understood
We
that
knew-
part.
Right, we knew that.
Because we want a community standard, and it's got to be across the board, it's got to include our land,
Gotta
too.
include us.
Right, I mean,
But in the executive course of Wanderers, where it's developed as the large lot equestrian uses, we actually own the lake, but the
We actually,
obligation of maintenance falls
we
upon,
transferred the lakes to them and kept maintenance, drainage, and storage easements over it.
Okay.
But they physically own those lakes now.
okay, so we have easement, but it's not our obligation under that condition.
We do not
But
maintain
some
those.
instances,
Inside
our
of
water.
Lakefield, we do.
Okay,
Right.
okay, so sometimes it's our waterways, but it applies to us also.
Mr. Schofield said that again, inside of Lakefield we do?
Inside of the Lakefield, the parts of it that are, when you get north of there, the lakes inside of Lakefield, north do belong to us, and we do maintain them.
Okay.
All right, very well, then. I think-
Okay, that takes us to the end of the regular agenda and to consent agenda, to the public hearings to regular agenda, and this item would normally be on the consent agenda. It's a task order to Ingenuity, and I believe,
Yes, I do have a conflict with that one, so I will recuse myself because the engineering firm that I work for and own one share of stock in has other contracts unrelated to anything to do with Wellington with Ingenuity Group, so I'll go ahead and recuse myself.
basically what this is the topographic survey along Big Blue to allow the design,
The pathway widening.
yeah. Got to do it. Now, that was an interesting question, as you all know, Bill Klein likes to ask us questions, and we do have LiDAR surveys that we did about a decade ago for our, to challenge the theme of rate maps, but they're not detailed enough to use for this. So. Anyway, we're recommending approval, and we have the money to do it, and we have the money for the pathway.
And we're going to be doing the design in-house.
Okay.
So we're doing the design in-house, and this is just for surveying?
Yep, you need a survey to do that. We don't have that capability in-house, so we send it out to one of our consultants.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the agenda, and so we need to bring the mayor back, because then we have the annual Acme landowners meeting.
And there she is.
Okay. In the landowners meeting, the